everybody, it's Becky Ziemba with Nebraska Realty, and I started last week reading from Once Upon a Property. It's a cute little book that I got when I was in Boston at the National Realtors Association conference. And it's just fairy tales that they have turned into how would this have turned out if a realtor had been there to help the client make their decisions and move on from there. So this week, I thought I would read to you Rapunzel. This one isn't as good in my opinion as the Three Little Pigs, but it's still a good one. So Rapunzel. Once upon a time, in a village far, far away, there lived a man and a woman. They had long wished for a child, but despite all their hope, their wish remained unfulfilled. Through the rear window of their house, they could see into the garden of a neighboring property, where the most beautiful herbs and plants grew behind a high wall. No one dared go into it because it belonged to an enchantress who had great power and was feared throughout the land. One day, the woman was standing by this window. She looked down into the garden and she saw the most beautiful Rapunzel flower, also known as Rapunzel, sprouting. There's the husband and wife looking down into the garden of the enchantress. It looked so fresh and green that she truly longed for it and had the greatest desire to eat its herbaceous roots. This desire increased every day, as she knew that she could not get any of it, and she quite pined away to the point of looking pale and miserable. Her husband was alarmed and asked, "What ails you, dear wife?" "Ah," she replied, "if I can't get some of the Rapunzel to eat, which is in the garden behind her house, I worry I shall die." The man, who loved her, thought, "Sooner than let your wife die, bring her some of the Rapunzel yourself, no matter the cost." At twilight, he clambered down over the wall into the garden of the enchantress, hastily dug up a handful of Rapunzel and took it to his wife. She at once made herself a salad of it and ate it with much relish. She, however, liked it so much, so very much, that the next day she longed for it 3 times as much as before. If he was to have any rest, her husband knew he must once more descend into the garden to fetch it. So in the gloom of the evening, he let himself down again, but when he clambered down the wall, he was terribly afraid, for he saw the enchantress standing there before him. "How dare you descend into my garden and steal my Rapunzel, you thief? You shall suffer greatly for this," she cried. "Let mercy take the place of justice," he cried, "for I only made up my mind to do this out of necessity. My wife saw your Rapunzel from the window and felt such a longing for it that she would have died without it." Then the enchantress allowed her anger to be softened and said to him, "If the case be as you say, I will allow you to take away with you as much Rapunzel as you will. On one condition, you must give me the child which your wife will bring into the world. It shall be treated well, and I will take care of it like a mother." There's the picture of him talking to the enchantress. The man, in his terror, agreed to everything, and when his wife eventually found herself with child, the enchantress appeared and gave the child the name Rapunzel and took it away with her. Rapunzel grew into the most beautiful child under the sun, but when she grew older, the enchantress shut her into a tower which lay in the forest and had neither stairs nor door, only a tiny window at the top. When the enchantress wanted to go in, she placed herself beneath it and cried, "Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your hair to me." You see, Rapunzel had magnificent long hair, fine as spun gold, and when she heard the voice of the enchantress, she unfastened her braided tresses, wound them around one of the hooks of the window above, and the hair fell 20 yards down. The enchantress climbed up it. To pass the time in between, Rapunzel would, in her solitude, let her sweet voice resound from the tower and out into the kingdom through song. One day, while riding on horseback into the village, her sweet voice was heard by a woman by the name of Lucille. "Greetings, kind stranger," Lucille called up to Rapunzel. "Who goes there?" replied Rapunzel, wary of any unknown visitors and frightened that the enchantress might appear at any moment. "My name is Lucille. I'm a realtor, a member of the National Association of Realtors, an enchanted group of real estate experts servicing those in the kingdom at large." "What do you want, Lucille of the National Association of Realtors?" asked Rapunzel. "I would love to view the interior of your tower, but alas, this fortress has no door," Lucille said. Once Rapunzel learned that Lucille adhered to strict realtor code of ethics, she let her hair down and motioned for Lucille to climb into it. There's Rapunzel with all of her hair. So Lucille did, and upon reaching the tower's top, she nearly lost her breath from the stunning scene. Seeing the potential of the magically serene location, Lucille asked, "Would you ever consider selling this tower, dear stranger?" Rapunzel looked at Lucille, bewildered, for it is in a prime location with an unparalleled scenic view of the entire kingdom. "You could easily obtain a buyer," Lucille continued, her eyes beaming. "Alas, this tower is not mine to own," said Rapunzel before explaining to Lucille that she wished to be free herself from the enchantress's captivity. But upon the liberating thought, Rapunzel felt a familiar tug on her hair. 'Twas the enchantress frantically climbing up the tower to see what the clamor was all about. "What goes on within my tower?" the enchantress demanded when she arrived at the top. "This is Lucille," Rapunzel replied nervously, "a realtor, a member of the prestigious National Association of Realtors." Lucille explained to the enchantress that her property could be so much more than a sad prison for Rapunzel. "Imagine a restaurant in this tower," Lucille quipped. "People would come from far and wide to enjoy farm-to-table dining with its magical view and your enchanted garden below." Okay, so I skipped that picture, sorry. There's Lucille climbing up with Rapunzel, not looking too happy. And then there's Lucille talking with the enchantress about what possibility her property has. This got the enchantress thinking. Lucille could tell she smiled upon the thought. "If you let this poor girl relocate and turn the tower into an enchanted eatery, you could earn revenue and might become very wealthy indeed," Lucille assured. The enchantress's eyes widened at the thought and wondered if she had let this grudge grow for long enough. After all, she had daydreamed of owning her own business. And so it happened, Lucille reached out to other local professionals to draw up a contract for the enchantress, freeing Rapunzel from her forced solitude and making way for a new rooftop restaurant. Rapunzel gathered her belongings, cut her long hair, and fled from the doorless tower with Lucille in search of a new place for herself. So there's Rapunzel and Lucille looking for a new place. Lucille helped her secure a small apartment with a beautiful backyard that had incredible acoustics for Rapunzel to practice her singing. One day after Rapunzel moved in and had been singing in her garden, the sweet sound struck her neighbors, who were curious to know the vocalist. They introduced themselves and asked if they might join her in her singing. Their sing-alongs became a nightly ritual, which pleased Rapunzel, as she had never had such lovely neighbors, or really any neighbors at all, come to think of it. And so Rapunzel lived happily ever after, thanks to the expertise of realtor Lucille, who treated Rapunzel and her new neighbors to dinner at the newest kingdom hotspot, Rapunzel's Tower, where the enchantress almost atoned for her regrettable behavior with her lauded Rapunzel casserole. And there they are, eating dinner at the new place to eat. I will definitely say that story, I don't remember some of the beginning of it, and when I first read it, I was like, oh, that's really how Rapunzel starts? I guess so. But in real estate, truly, the thing that we live by is location, location, location. You want whatever your property is to have its highest and best usage. So there are some places where there's houses now. There's one actually right outside of my neighborhood. There's a house for sale. They tried to start at $1 million. There's no pictures of the house. They're really just selling the land, because now that piece of land that was a family home that a family loved is just not as nice of a place to have a family home. They're probably more selling it for it to be developed into businesses and office space, something like that. So unfortunately, that home is no longer the highest and best use. Highest and best use for that piece of land would probably be a doctor's office or some other standalone business. So I would never be that realtor that's going to come knocking on doors to say, hey, have you thought about selling your house? That's just not how I do my business. There are some people that will do that because they see the opportunity, like Lucille did in this story, for what could become of that property. So let me know what questions you have. I would love to help you on your real estate journey, wherever you may be or whatever you're hoping to achieve. I'll talk to you soon. Bye, guys.